Employment documents, Employment Eligibility Verification, Form I-9, Non-Compete Agreement, Employment Contract, Employee Information Sheet. One of the first topics I'm going to cover is the Employment Eligibility Verification Form I-9. This can be found at the irs.gov website link provided below. The I-9 is an employment eligibility verification form for your new hire. This is a fantastic resource here at the IRS for any government forms that you need for a small business. The top one here is the form you're actually going to need. Included on it are all the instructions you will need and the actual forms you'll need to fill out. The I-9 is used by the employer to verify the identity and employment authorization for each new employee. Newly hired employees must complete and sign Section 1 of Form I-9 no later than the first date of employment. This is the actual form they're going to need to fill out. On it, they'll need to have their name, their address, date of birth, social security number, and contact information. But this is the really important part. They are basically swearing to the fact that they're either a citizen of the United States, a non-citizen, a lawful permanent resident, or an alien authorized to work. They're required to checkmark one of these, sign, and date. You, as the employer, are required to ask them for some identification to verify what they're stating. They provide a list here of the actual documents you need. You are required to either get one from List A or one from List B and List C in a combination. As the employer, you then have to actually physically hold them, look at them, and make a decision for yourself whether they're valid. You can make copies for your records, but it's not required. Also, you fill this out with basically the information that you need from the identification provided. The important thing here is this is for your records. You don't actually have to send this in to the IRS, but you should keep a copy in case it's ever requested from them. Another important document that a small business might consider is a non-compete agreement. Below you'll find a link to just one of the many websites that can provide a free form for you. What is a non-compete agreement? A non-compete agreement is a contract between a company and an employee. This agreement states that the employee will not engage or participate in another company's business that directly competes with present employer for 6 months to 2 years. It also says that the company has the right to fire an employee if the terms are not complied with, and the right to recover damages. It has the right to recover damages. This non-compete agreement must be signed by the employer and accepted and agreed to by the employee in order for them to work for the company. What should you include on a non-disclosure agreement? The definition of the confidential information that the NDA deals with. You also want to provide any exclusions from the confidential information, the obligations and duties of the party receiving the confidential information, the time periods for which the NDA will be valid and enforceable, and any miscellaneous provisions that you might want to add. This is the link I provided earlier. On it is just one of the many examples of just a basic non-compete agreement that you can use if you feel like you need it for your employees. Another great thing to do is maybe just go to Google, and I Googled free non-disclosure agreements, and there are a slew of them on here for you. Just looking through and kind of piecing together what works best for your business is always a good idea. The next important document to consider is the employment contract. Below is a link to a pretty good template for one online. What is an employment contract? An employment contract or an employment agreement explains the terms of employment between a company and its employee. It's usually agreed upon and signed before employment begins. What should be included on an employment contract? That basically is up to the employer and the employee. There's usually an agreement between the two what's important, but these are just some basic things that are good to include. The first thing would be job title and a description of the duties associated with the position, the location of the employment, and it should explain the base salary as well as any bonus or benefits. Some contracts include a provision for severance payments in the event the employer terminates the employment without cause or good reason. In the end, a good employment contract protects both the employer and the employee from misunderstandings. This is just an example of the contract that I provided the link for. As you can see, it has services, salaries and perks, position, increments and appraisal. It's just basically detailing exactly what is expected and things that can also protect the employee. And then of course it's signed and dated and copies given to both parties. Once again, a great resource is Google. If you search employment contract free, you will just get tons and tons of different ones that you can pick from. I always suggest looking at a bunch and sort of editing it to suit your particular business. The very first paperwork you will receive from your future employee will be an employment application. Below is a link to what I think is a pretty good employment application that you can use. What is an employment application? An employment application is the first step in finding the right employee for your business. It gives potential employees the opportunity to give basic information about themselves. What should be included on an employee application? Addresses and contact information. How many hours can you work weekly? Can you work overtime? Are you willing to travel or relocate? Have you ever been convicted of a crime? Do you have a driver's license? Provide past employer information, education information, and also references. This is the application I provided the link to. As you can see, it includes the basic information for the employee, contact information. Something that's important is to kind of get an idea of their availability, because that becomes very important as you go along. Their basic education, so depending on the job will depend on what you are actually looking for. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? It's a very good thing to know as well. The driver's license is important because you need to know that they're going to be responsible and able to make it to work and not rely on other people. Also included is an area for them to put their previous employers and kind of explain why they left. That's good to know because it can give you a good idea about how they're going to behave in the future. References are great to have to be able to contact somebody who isn't necessarily a past employer is a good thing to have. With this employment application, it's just like the other ones. If you go to Google, there are a million different versions, and you just kind of can select the one that applies best for your company. Once hired, an important sheet to have is the employee information sheet. Below is a link to another good example of an information sheet. What is an employee information sheet? It is a great way to organize data on your current employees. What should be included on an employee information sheet? Hire date, W-4 and insurance, emergency contacts, personal information such as address, phone number, and email address. Date of birth, social security number, and driver's license information are optional. Here's an example of the employee data sheet that I provided. As you can see, it covers all of the different things that I explained are beneficial to have on record in case you ever have to quickly look up information on somebody.